What's up, guys? I hope you guys are all having a great day. So this is going to be a doozy of a video. I'm going to review all of Gohan's character from the very beginning to the end of the Buu Saga. Now, Gohan doesn't have the biggest role in the Buu Saga. There is a lot of stuff surrounding Gohan, especially in the opening sequence of the Buu Saga, but it doesn't end with him. So I'm just going to work my way through to the fight with Buuhan, and we'll just end it there. And then the next review will be surrounding all of Gohan through Dragon Ball Super. So the first thing I wanted to point out was all of the crazy amount of demonic symbolism scattered all throughout this arc. So as I've discussed in previous videos, Gohan, his mother, and pretty much his entire family are based on demons. A really interesting way to look at Gohan at the beginning of the Buu Saga is just keep in mind that his character, Goku, Chi-Chi, they are all based on characters who were previously demons in the story that Dragon Ball takes inspiration from. So Gohan goes to Satan City. There's also that cutaway in the original Dragon Ball Z anime where he's driving the 666 car with Videl, and we all know what Videl's name is backwards. And Gohan even faces off against a character who is basically Satan. I mean, the design that Akira Toriyama used for Dabura is no different than the design that he used for Lucifer in Sandland. So it's very obvious what Toriyama is doing here. He's using tons of demonic symbolism for Gohan specifically in the Buu Saga, and there's been a lot of that with Gohan from the very beginning of his character. I mean, he's trained by the Demon King, the reincarnation of Piccolo Daimao, basically the devil of the original Dragon Ball. So there's tons of that scattered throughout Gohan's character arc. So the opening sequence of the manga shows Gohan riding the Nimbus Cloud to school. And I remember, this is the first time I've read this portion of the manga for a while, and as I was reading it, I really got an appreciation for Gohan in this section of the story because he's not as mature as we see him in terms of being an adult later on in the series, and it was just refreshing to see Gohan as a teenager. I really like the scene where he catches the bullets whenever he's fighting as the Golden Fighter, and he crushes the bullets in his hand, and he takes out all those guys that are causing crime in the city. And Videl, I really forgot how cool Videl was in the Buu Saga. The fact that she's a crime fighter, the fact that, you know, her personality is of a strong woman, which of course Saiyans normally prefer, as we found out in Dragon Ball Super. The dynamic between her and Gohan is just very interesting because, you know, Videl is tough, and it's really hard for her to show any vulnerability, and she never does show any vulnerability until she meets Gohan. But also the baseball stuff with Gohan I thought was really funny. Just the entire opening sequence of the Buu Saga with Gohan is just extremely entertaining in a very classical, like, Dragon Ball-esque way. And then eventually we get to Gohan becoming the Great Saiyaman. And I know a lot of people aren't a fan of the Great Saiyaman, and Akira Toriyama actually kind of nods at how nerdy and ridiculous Gohan is when he becomes the Great Saiyaman. But the Great Saiyaman is cool in my opinion just because he's like a synthesis of like Superman and characters from like Power Rangers, Sentai related material. I just think he's really cool because he is inspired from stuff that Akira Toriyama liked as a child. But this scene, one scene that really stood out to me was this scene where Gohan gets mad because the criminals make fun of his name as Saiyaman. I thought that was really cool because it really shows you a side of Gohan that you don't get to see very often. Like the way he like stomps the ground whenever he gets mad because they're making fun of his name. I pointed out in previous videos that when Gohan gets mad, like his Saiyan nature comes out, and you can really see that in the scene. Like that's something I really like about the Buu Saga, and you can see this with Goten and Trunks as well whenever they knock out the Mighty Mask and they're trying to like participate in the World Tournament. Like you can kind of see like the inner nature of these characters sort of coming out. And it reminds me a lot of that interview with Akira Toriyama where he talks about the poison that sort of seeps out in Goku sometimes, that he was surprised that people didn't notice. There's subtle things that all of these characters do because they're based on a character who was in fact a demon that I can totally see what Akira Toriyama is talking about. There's just very subtle things that all of these characters do that are, you know, very reminiscent of Sun Wukong and his demonic nature. All the stuff with the Great Saiyaman I think is cool. It's very classic Toriyama. It's definitely him nodding at his love of Sentai material, and I love it. I think it's great. It's like if you're into like superhero comics, it's a little bit different than your average superhero comic because Akira Toriyama loves to throw comedy into his stories way more than the average comic book artist because, you know, inside he's a gag manga creator. But to me, that makes it more enjoyable because I love to laugh, and I particularly enjoy Akira Toriyama's humor. So Akira Toriyama has always had trouble figuring out how to use Gohan as the main character. Because Gohan, unlike Goku, doesn't just fight because he wants to fight, you know? Like, he fights to protect people. He fights because he has a very strong sense of justice. And his sense of justice isn't based on any, like, personal ideas of what justice is. He just has a sense of justice that's, like, innate to who he is. And so, like, that's very, very powerful within Gohan. So much so that it sort of backfired when he was facing Cell in the previous saga. So the fact that that part of his personality is basically what spawns the Great Saiyaman is pretty cool writing on Akira Toriyama's part, because he basically took that aspect of Gohan's personality and used it as a motivator for combat that made it realistic for Gohan to have potential as the main character. Of course, it didn't pan out because, you know, Akira Toriyama, he really likes to use Dragon Ball as an allegory for martial arts and not really as a superhero type story. And that's something that he's gotten used to. So I can see why he didn't go with Gohan as the main character, because his talents revolved around his ability to write around the rules of martial arts. Like, the entire story so far has been about punishing characters when they don't practice a certain set of principles reflected in martial arts, and rewarding said characters when they do practice it. So, like, and Goku's the star example of this. That's the reason that the plot always rewards him, because he's the sole practitioner of martial arts. I just thought that that was a really interesting way that Akira Toriyama went about giving Gohan a motivator for combat. Anyway, so before the tournament starts, we get this really cool, really funny training montage between Goten and Gohan, and I always thought this was really cool because it kind of reminded me of the relationship between Gohan and Goku. And Toriyama did something similar with Gohan and Piccolo. That was also a play on the relationship between Gohan and Grandpa Gohan. But the whole thing just reminds me of, like, the relationship between the two, especially how surprised Gohan is with Goten's power. The fact that he's already a Super Saiyan is also interesting, and I also think that it's kind of funny that people tend to overlook this when they complain about the Universe 6 Saiyans, which are, you know, a more highly evolved version of the Saiyans from Universe 7, which is essentially what Goten and Trunks are. But the scene where Gohan trains Videl is probably the most interesting to me, because of, you know, the fact that Videl is a play on Devil. She was already kind of a hothead. The idea of learning how to control your chi is associated with enlightenment. Also, it's a play on what Gohan did for Goku, and eventually, you know, within the context of Dragon Ball Online, Gohan ends up teaching the entire planet how to fly. And so it's all like a really cool play on the effect that Grandpa Gohan had on Goku, and it's going through this cycle where Gohan is having the same effect on planet Earth that Grandpa Gohan had on Goku, which I think is just an extremely interesting idea. Very cool on Toriyama's part. But yeah, Gohan is very cool at the beginning of the Buu saga. I really, really like his character. I like young Gohan, like teenage Gohan. It's a shame that he didn't stick around very long as a character, but I enjoyed it while we had it. Like, he doesn't have this degree of, like, adult-like maturity. He definitely is more than Goten and Trunks whenever they were teenagers, but there's just a hint of, like, immaturity there that I really enjoy in Gohan's character. Now, this is something I love talking about. This is something I've talked about before to my friends and online. Toriyama pulled a fast one here with Gohan having energy stolen from him in order to feed Majin Buu's egg so that he can be, you know, essentially reborn in a sense. So the entire idea behind using chi to bring a creature in an egg to life, specifically the energy that Gohan has drained from him, the Super Saiyan energy, the golden chi, this is a literal play on what created Sun Wukong. So in Journey to the West, what created Sun Wukong was a long process of this stone egg absorbing yin and yang energy, and yin and yang energy is what is needed to create chi. And so they're essentially stealing the same type of energy that created Sun Wukong. And don't forget that the Super Saiyan transformation was the result of Goku taking on Vegeta's pride and basically finding his personal balance of yin and yang. So the Super Saiyan transformation was already associated with yin and yang. And then they take the energy from Super Saiyan Gohan and they use it to feed Majin Buu to bring him back to life. Now, this was so subtle, yet if you're a Journey to the West fan and you catch onto this, it makes the story that much cooler. And I think that's a lot of what I really enjoy about Akira Toriyama's writing as a Journey to the West fan, is how subtly he uses the concepts from it in his own story. Like, he's not outwardly telling you that that's what he's doing, but if you've read the story, then you sort of understand and you understand what chi is and all this good stuff. then you sort of understand what he's doing. Like, you just sort of get it. But yeah, the scene where Gohan throws his glasses off and he becomes the Golden Warrior in his Great Saiyaman outfit, and everybody realizes that he's the Golden Warrior and Great Saiyaman, is one of my favorite scenes in the Buu Saga. I remember when I was younger and I saw this scene, I was like, holy shit, Gohan is the GOAT. Like, this whole thing just makes him look so cool to, like, everybody that he went to school with, everybody on planet Earth. And it's really cool to think about it within the terms of this is the future of mankind, not necessarily Super Saiyan per se, but the ability to use your chi to this extent, and like everybody's basically seeing a preview of like the future of mankind thanks to Gohan, like the type of warrior you can become, you know, thanks to his guidance. I always thought that was a really cool idea too. But Vegeta points out here, and I think this is something that a lot of people overlook, Vegeta points out here that Gohan can't bring out his full potential like he did in Super Saiyan 2. And I think this is a very, very important thing that people tend to overlook. And this is something else that is brought up later on after Gohan's fight with Dabura, which again I think is really cool since Dabura is a play on all this demonic symbolism in the Buu Saga. And I also just think it's a great fight. But later on, when Gohan is trying to stop Buu from being hatched, Gohan basically blatantly says that if he thinks he can summon his original full power from the Cell Saga, he thinks he can take down Dabura and take care of the problem. Now, that's something that's very important. That's something I want you to keep in mind going to the next section of the story, because it has major implications in terms of like what Akira Toriyama like sort of did with Gohan like later on in the future. But after Gohan loses to Buu and he's taken aside and he is trained via the Z sword, he's given the Kaioshin outfit. Oh, and just a really cool thing that I noticed. I know that it's common knowledge that the Z sword is definitely referencing Excalibur. But the whole weight aspect of it, the fact that it weighs so much, is likely a direct play on the staff that Sun Wukong used in Journey to the West, because it was a staff that was so heavy that like he was basically the only person that could use it. I mean, let's be real. There might have been other people that could use it, but like he was essentially the only person who could lift it out of the ground and use it. So it's like a double cross reference in that sense. And then I really like how Toriyama comes back to the baseball scene whenever Goku goes to throw the rock at the Z sword and then Gohan holds it like a baseball bat. I always thought that was really cool too. But this is when we are first introduced to the old Kai. And one thing I think it's very interesting to consider here is that the old Kai said that who we now know as Beerus was scared of him because of his ability to essentially bring beings beyond their latent potential. And you have to wonder, why would the old Kai be interested in having this ability? What is his motivation for wanting to use it? Like, why would this conversation come up between this person and the old Kai about him using this ability, and why would he be scared of it? It's a very interesting thing to think about. And I've thought about it quite a bit, and the conclusion that I've come to is that this ability is actually dangerous. Because if you were to use it on a mortal, let's say a mortal that, you know, the type of mortal that Zamasu despised in Dragon Ball Super. If you were to use this ability on a mortal, and they weren't Goku or Gohan or somebody with a pure heart, somebody that the gods accepted as a being worthy of this power, it would be a mistake. It would be a horrible, horrible thing. So this implies that beings need to go through a certain level of development before they can be worthy of this type of power. And so if Beerus was afraid of this technique, despite the fact that Beerus didn't exist at this time, if he was afraid of this technique, it would make perfect sense for him to be scared of it for that reason, due to the laws of mortal development. So if a being had their potential unlocked, and again, they weren't Gohan or Goku, that being Beerus would be totally justified in being fearful of the potential of this ability and the implications that it could have on the universe. And something I find very interesting about this whole exchange is that by the end of this whole exchange, Kibito goes from being very judgmental and harsh of Gohan to being so accepting of who he is that he's like, you can see that he's like proud of him. So it's almost as if Gohan like passed the test, so to speak, of the gods. He essentially got the approval of the gods. Now I know I've talked about the Ultimate State and Gohan Beast a lot in my previous videos, but I can't not talk about it in this one because, you know, it's important. This is an important part of Gohan Beast and the Ultimate State. So as I've established in my previous videos, it's very obvious that Gohan's latent potential is awakened by rage. We see this happen whenever he's having the ritual done to him. And his rage also brings out his Saiyan nature, which is dangerous. That's what makes him arrogant later on in the Buu saga. Not just his sense of justice, but his arrogance. But I want to come back to what I was talking about earlier whenever Gohan said he could not awaken his original power. Now, that is very, very interesting to consider within the context of this scene. Because that means that Gohan could never, ever use the same ability that he used when he became Super Saiyan 2 in Cell Saga to bring out his full potential after he has his potential unlocked by the old Kai. Because I want you to remember that the old Kai says that in order for him to bring out his ultimate form, he fires it up just like Super Saiyan. He uses it just like Super Saiyan. And earlier in the arc, when Gohan's using Super Saiyan and he's trying to use his full potential, it won't work because he can't do it. He can't bring out his full potential, which means this was never Gohan's full potential. If you actually look at it within the full context of everything that's being communicated to us, this was never actually all of Gohan's latent potential, because Gohan could not bring out all of his latent potential literally just pages before this. And that has major implications for Gohan Beast, because that essentially suggests that Gohan Beast has been a form that's been laying dormant in Gohan the entire time. And that the manga itself actually even suggests this, whether it meant to or not. The fact that it all fits so well, again, just speaks to, and Toriyama has been praised for this. Like, in interviews, people have said this to him. Your ability to, like, make everything fit is just uncanny. It's insane. And this is a huge implication of that. Like, the way he pulled this off makes so much sense. Because if Gohan has to rely on a method, like firing it up like Super Saiyan, to bring out his latent potential, and he was incapable of bringing out all of his latent potential as a Super Saiyan, it makes perfect sense that he hasn't been able to use his full potential this whole time. It makes perfect sense. Like, it's crazy how much sense it makes. But I just really wanted to call attention to that because I just think it's a really cool aspect of Gohan Beast and the Ultimate State. But if you want to learn more about my stance on Gohan Beast and the Ultimate State, you can watch my previous videos. I did a video called Gohan the Demon, which is really cool. I also did a video establishing the difference between Super Saiyan and Gohan Beast. Also, whether or not the Ultimate State is considered a transformation. So you can go check out all of those because they're all really cool. But essentially, just to end off this interaction between the old Kai and Gohan, the idea that the Kai's job is to bring mortals to their maximum potential, and the idea that Goku has been painted as the ideal mortal multiple times throughout the series, and the idea that Gohan is his son and was also born with his pure heart and his nature, and the idea that Gohan goes through this cycle where he gets the approval of the gods and also has his potential unlocked to the absolute max, is just so cool because it really reflects the job of the Kaioshin, and it really reflects the idea that Gohan and Goku with their pure hearts, just like Kami said all the way back in the original Dragon Ball, are essentially what these beings who are trying to develop mortals are looking for. So the fact that it just so happens that the type of mortal they were looking for had his potential unlocked and is being implemented to stop Majin Buu, it's just an extremely interesting idea. And again, it just goes to show to how intricate Toriyama's storytelling can be if you really like understand the narrative and what he's trying to tell you. After Gohan shows up against Buu, I have mixed feelings about this because Gohan is the coolest he's ever been here, hands down. And I understand why people love Ultimate Gohan, his attitude, his arrogance, and stuff like that. But I also understand that Dragon Ball is an allegory for martial arts, like I've said in previous videos. And I also understand that the reason Gohan loses is because the series is an allegory for martial arts, and Gohan has not yet fit the standard that Goku fits in terms of a martial artist. Despite the fact that he was sent here specifically to kill Buu, his attitude of wanting to kill Buu, having this strong desire to kill Buu, is something that the series has always looked down on. The series has always looked down on this idea of like this strong desire to kill your opponent. And again, the series, it's really a repeat in a sense of what happened in the Cell Saga whenever Goku was getting after Gohan for not killing Cell fast enough, except this time it's not his emotions that are or the justification of the things that he's doing that's causing him to act up. It's literally his arrogance. It's just his Saiyan nature making him arrogant, like every Saiyan ever, especially Vegeta. Vegeta is a victim of this countless times throughout the series. So essentially what happened here is Akira Toriyama, instead of using, a scenario similar to what would have happened if Goku lost himself on Namek and didn't practice martial arts and failed to essentially practice Budo correctly, instead of that being the scenario that plays out with Gohan in the Cell Saga, because that's essentially what it is. It's a what-if scenario if Goku didn't have the principles of martial arts to help carry his character through his Super Saiyan transformation. That's what's happening in the Cell Saga. But in this case, Gohan is pulling a Vegeta. And it's really interesting because that's essentially what Akira Toriyama is choosing to use to have Gohan fail here, is his arrogance and his need and want to kill his opponent, which is what Vegeta falls victim to countless times throughout the series. And it really speaks to Gohan needing to tame his nature more. And that's something that Dragon Ball Super Superhero really expands on, and that's something that Super itself really expands on, and I'll talk about that more in the future. But it really does create like the future narrative that they ended up implementing in Dragon Ball Super, that in terms of Gohan taming his nature, he still has a lot of work to do. But the last thing I'm going to discuss before I wrap this video up is essentially the fact that Vegito is the one that comes in to stop Buhan. Because this is really cool from a narrative standpoint, and that is because Goku and Vegeta come from heaven and hell to merge as a perfect, harmonious representation of yin and yang, the thing that Gohan failed to be through his arrogance, and that ends up being who the plot rewards as a result of it being a reflection of the concept that Dragon Ball rewards and perpetuates throughout its plot throughout the entire series. And I just think that's a really cool idea, because again, Gohan fell victim to his arrogance. Buu became much more arrogant after he became Buhan, and then who comes to stop him? Again, another perfect representation of yin and yang and balance. Now, despite the fact that Vegito is very arrogant, he's also got his head in the game. He also knows what he's doing it for. He's got Goku to balance out Vegeta. The way Akira Toriyama executed that whole thing really works, and he really did a great job. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Look forward to the Super version of the Gohan character review coming soon. I hope you enjoyed this again. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.